I'm General Ulysses S. Grant, and you join me today in my library. And today I should like to reflect with you about the very, very difficult and tragic problem of prisoner exchanges and paroles. The most prominent feature of that process is the Dix Hill cartel, about which I'll address in a moment. But initially, the federal government did not want to exchange or have a formal exchange program with the so-called Confederate States because it was felt that that action could be construed as an official recognition of the Confederate States of America government. So President Lincoln and his advisors wanted to stay away from that, even though there were efforts going on about prisoner exchanges. For example, efforts like in November of '61, the privateer Jeff Davis was captured, and in the Philadelphia trial, all of the members of the crew were sentenced to be hanged. President Jefferson Davis sent information to the Lincoln administration that said, if you hang those prisoners, then we're going to hang a like number of federal prisoners. They weren't hanged. That matter went away. And there had been early efforts to work out prisoner exchanges. For example, on February the 18th of '61, Major General David Twiggs surrendered all federal troops in Texas, and they were paroled and sent north. And indeed, the garrison of Fort Sumter was paroled and sent back north. In Missouri, on August the 28th of '61, W.H.L. Wallace, not to be mistaken with Lew Wallace, another individual, agrees with Gideon Pillow of the CSA to exchange prisoners, quoting, if not setting a precedent, end quote. But they exchanged only 3 prisoners. October the 14th of '61, I began talking with Leonidas Polk about prisoner exchanges, and we exchanged some prisoners. And on December the 11th, Congress passed a resolution encouraging President Lincoln to formalize and do something about exchanging of prisoners. Because to go back to early '61, the early war in July of '61, when Bull Run was fought, there were 1,000 federal soldiers captured. Well, that was the first time that the North, the families and so forth of those soldiers, realized we need to have some way to get these men back and not have them languish, as it were, in Confederate prison camps. So the pressure began for President Lincoln to do something, whatever that might be, about a prisoner exchange, and the CSA was equally reluctant and inclined to do prisoner exchanges as well. So the timeline is early efforts to negotiate and between generals, myself and Polk, with Leonidas, with the Missouri issues over there, Sterling Price, and Charles C. Fremont, the great pathfinder, and so forth. Just little efforts, no formal efforts. Well, in December the 11th of '61, Congress passed a resolution to the president, do something. And then in November, that prior November, the privateers had been seized and were going to be hung and did not get hanged for their privateer crime. And you have to remember, privateers were the Confederate Navy in essence. On June the 23rd of '62, the Senate passed a resolution telling the president, do something, because by this time the prisoners are building up on both sides. So in July 22nd of '62, John A. Dix, Major General John A. Dix of Volunteers, met with Major General Daniel Harvey Hill, and they worked out a cartel agreement that was based essentially on the British-American Treaty Prisoner Exchange of the War of 1812. And they hammered out what they felt to be a good agreement. Now, it's important to know what that cartel said. It's not a lengthy document. Article 1, it is hereby stipulated that all prisoners of war held by either party, including those taken on private armed vessels known as privateers, shall be discharged upon the conditions and terms following. Prisoners to be exchanged man for man and officer for officer. Privateers to be placed upon the footing of officers and men of the Navy. Men and officers of lower grades may be exchanged for officers of a higher grade, and men and officers of different services may be exchanged according to the following scale of equivalence. A general commanding-in-chief. They went that high. A general commanding-in-chief or an admiral shall be exchanged for officers of equal rank, or for 60 privates or common seamen. A flag officer or major general shall be exchanged for officers of equal rank, or for 40 privates or common seamen. A commodore carrying a broad pennant or a brigadier general shall be exchanged for officers of equal rank, or 20 privates or common seamen. A captain in the Navy or a colonel shall be exchanged for officers of equal rank, or for 15 privates or common seamen. A lieutenant colonel or a commander in the Navy shall be exchanged for officers of equal rank, or for 10 privates or common seamen. A lieutenant commander or major shall be exchanged for officers of equal rank, or 8 privates or common seamen. A lieutenant or a master in the Navy or a captain in the Army or Marines shall be exchanged for officers of equal rank, or 6 privates or common seamen. Master's mates in the Navy or lieutenants and ensigns in the Army or Marines shall be exchanged for officers of equal rank, or 4 privates or common seamen. Midshipmen, warrant officers in the Navy, masters of merchant vessels, and commanders of privateers shall be exchanged for officers of equal rank, or 3 privates or common seamen. Second captains, lieutenants, or mates of merchant vessels or privateers, and all petty officers in the Navy, and all non-commissioned officers in the Army or Marines shall be severally exchanged for persons of equal rank, or for 2 privates or common seamen, and private soldiers or common seamen shall be exchanged for each other, man for man. Article 2 was local, state, and civil militia rank held by persons not in actual military service will not be recognized, the basis of exchange being the grade actually held in the naval and military service of the respective parties. Article 3, if citizens held by either party on charges of disloyalty or any alleged civil offense are exchanged, it shall be only for citizens. Captured sutlers, teamsters, and all civilians in the actual service of either party to be exchanged for persons in similar position. Article 4, all prisoners of war to be discharged on parole in 10 days after their capture, and the prisoners now held and those hereafter to be taken are to be transported to the points mutually agreed upon at the expense of the capturing party. The surplus prisoners, not exchanged, shall not be permitted to take up arms again, nor to serve as military police or constabulary force in any fort, garrison, or field work held by either of the respective parties, not as guards of prisons, depots, or stores, nor to discharge any duty usually performed by soldiers until exchanged under the provisions of this cartel. That caused some problems later. The exchange is not to be considered complete until the officer or soldier exchanged for has been actually restored to the lines which he belongs. Article 5. Each party, upon the discharge of prisoners of the other party, is authorized to discharge an equal number of their own officers or men from parole, furnishing at the same time to the other party a list of the prisoners discharged and of their own officers and men relieved from parole, thus enabling each party to relieve from parole such of their own officers and men as the party may choose. The lists thus manually furnished will keep both parties advised of the true condition of the exchange of prisoners. Article 6 says the stipulations and provisions above mentioned to be a binding obligation during the continuance of the war. It matters not which party may have the surplus of prisoners. The great principles involved being, first, an equitable exchange of prisoners, man for man, officer for officer, or officers of higher grade exchanged for officers of lower grade, or for privates, according to the scale of equivalence. Second, that privateers and officers and men of different services may be exchanged according to the same scale of equivalence. Third, that all prisoners of whatever arm of service are to be exchanged or paroled in 10 days from the time of their capture, if it be practicable to transfer them to their own lines in that time, if not, as soon thereafter as practicable. Fourth, that no officer, soldier, or employer in the service of either party is to be considered as exchanged and absolved from his parole until his equivalent has actually reached the lines of his friends. Fifth, that the parole forbids the performance of field, garrison, police, guard, or constabulary duty. And there are supplemental articles 7 that says all prisoners of war now held on either side and all prisoners hereafter taken shall be sent with all reasonable dispatch to A.M. Aikens, below Dutch Gap on the James River in Virginia, or to Vicksburg on the Mississippi River in the state of Mississippi, and there exchanged or paroled until such exchange can be effected. Notice being previously given by each party of the number of prisoners it will send and the time when they will be delivered at those points respectively. And in case the vicissitudes of war shall change the military relations of the places designated in this article to the contending parties so as to render the same inconvenient for the delivery and exchange of prisoners, other places being as nearly as may be the present local relations of said places to the lines of said parties, shall be by mutual agreement substituted. But nothing in this article contained shall prevent the commanders of two opposing armies from exchanging prisoners or releasing them on parole from other points mutually agreed upon by said commanders. And Article 8, for the purpose of carrying into effect the foregoing articles of agreement, each party will appoint 2 agents to be called agents for the exchange of prisoners of war, whose duty it shall be to communicate with each other by correspondence and otherwise to prepare the lists of prisoners, to attend to the delivery of prisoners at the places agreed on, and to carry out promptly, effectually, and in good faith all the details and provisions of the said articles of agreement. And the final article, 9, and in case any misunderstanding shall arise in regard to any clause or stipulation in the foregoing articles, it is mutually agreed that such misunderstanding shall not interrupt the release of prisoners on parole as herein provided, but shall be made the subject of friendly explanations in order that the object of this agreement may neither be defeated nor postponed. John A. Dix, Major General, U.S. Army. D.H. Hill, Major General, C.S. Army. And that was how we began prisoner exchanges and had done the dance around not recognizing the Confederacy and yet getting prisoners back. And that was in July of 62, July 31st by the time they signed it. Then back in June there had been resolution, order number 72, had been issued that set up 3 camps for paroled prisoners before they're exchanged. One at Benton Barracks in St. Louis, one at Camp Chase in Columbus, Ohio, and then another at Annapolis, Maryland, which became known as Camp Paroled. And prisoners from the respective regions where the camp is located were to be sent there. The problem was that, as in the cartel, it said that prisoners are not supposed to do any garrison duty, work duty. The prisoners reporting there were told that you're not going to be furloughed. Now, these are federal prisoners set for exchange and parole to go to one of these 3 camps. Well, they were told you can't be furloughed. They were all expecting to go home. This did not create good morale. Many of them just walked off and went home, took French leave. And when Lew Wallace, another General Wallace, was sent there to take command of one of those camps, he said it was abominable and abysmal. And the men just refused to do any work. They said, we don't have to. According to that cartel, you can't make us. You can't send us home, and we're not going to do any work because according to the cartel, we don't have to. Well, many of them, as I said, had just gone home. And those camps were always a sore spot until President Lincoln suspended the Dix Hill cartel. Well, in September of '62, President Lincoln issued the preliminary Emancipation Proclamation, and he indicated that states in rebellion, if they didn't come back into the Union, then any slaves there were going to be free, and indicated that they'd be recruited to be soldiers. President Davis, in December of 1862, on December 23rd, issued his proclamation that says, in part, that all Negro slaves captured in arms be at once delivered over to the executive authorities of their respective states to which they belong, to be dealt with according to the laws of said states. They'd be treated as runaway slaves and sent back to their former masters or put to work for the Confederacy. Article 4 of that proclamation said that the like orders be executed in all cases with respect to all commissioned officers of the United States when found serving in company with armed slaves in insurrection against the authorities of the different states of this Confederacy. They were going to hang the white federal officers. Well, as you would imagine, this did not sit well with the president. And after that, at December '62 Davis Proclamation, in January, just 9 days later, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, and the recruiting of black troops was on, and active efforts were made to recruit black troops. In April of '63, in response to this and the difficulties in prisoner exchanges, President Lincoln issued Order Number 100, creating the Libra Code, which became the Military Code of Justice and how to treat prisoners and exchanging prisoners and so forth. So the Libra Code came out in April of '63. And then in May of '63, the Confederate Congress reinforced President Davis's December proclamation and codified his statement and said captured black soldiers would be treated as slaves and sent back to their masters or put to work for the Confederacy, and they'd hang federal officers. President Lincoln, in July 31st of 1863, issued General Order Number 252, wherein he suspended the Dix Hill cartel, and he said, "It is the duty of every government to give protection to its citizens of whatever class, order, or condition, and especially to those who are duly organized as soldiers to the public service. The law of nations and usages and customs of war, as carried on by civilized powers, to permit no distinction as to color in the treatment of prisoners of war, and public enemies to sell or enslave any captured persons or on account of his color, and for no offense against the laws of war is a relapse into barbarism and a crime against civilization." The government of the United States will give the same protection to all its soldiers, and if the enemy shall sell or enslave anyone because of his color, the offense shall be punished by retaliation upon the enemy's prisoners in our possession. It is therefore ordered that for every soldier of the United States killed in violation of the laws of war, a rebel soldier shall be executed, and for everyone enslaved by the enemy or sold into slavery, a rebel soldier shall be placed at hard labor on the public works and continue at such labor until the order or the other shall be released and receive the treatment due to a prisoner of war. Abraham Lincoln. So that suspended the Dix Hill Cartel, which had worked fairly well. A bit awkward, Aiken's Landing for federal prisoners, no matter where they're captured, to be dispersed, and Vicksburg for Confederate prisoners, no matter where they were captured. But then Order 252 in July of 63 effectively ended the Dix Hill Cartel, which had been instituted in July of 62. So it only ran about a year. It's important to note that in July 31st of 63, President Lincoln stopped prisoner exchanges. I am frequently held responsible for prisoner exchanges and for the horror specifically of Andersonville. Well, by the time I got the command of all the armies in March of 64, Andersonville already had 30,000 prisoners. I was an Army commander in the Western Theater when President Lincoln stopped prisoner exchanges. Months later, I get to be the many months later, I'm the commanding officer of the United States Army. I didn't stop prisoner exchanges. President Lincoln had. I took office command in March of 64. President Lincoln had stopped prisoner exchanges in July of 63. So I had nothing to do with stopping the prisoners, the exchange of prisoners. I had no authority. So it's a misconception that I stopped them. Now, and I made this statement in August of 64. It is hard on our men held in southern prisons not to exchange them, but it is humanity to those left in the ranks to fight our battles. Every man we hold, when released on parole or otherwise, becomes an active soldier against us at once, either directly or indirectly. If we commence a system of exchange which liberates all prisoners taken, we will have to fight on until the whole South is exterminated. If we hold those caught, they amount to no more than dead men. At this particular time, to release all rebel prisoners north would ensure Sherman's defeat and would compromise our safety here. General Ulysses S. Grant, August 18, 1864. And in January of 65, the Confederacy was so desperate for manpower that they finally said, all right, in essence, we'll treat blacks equally. And we began exchanging prisoners. I notified Secretary Stanton. I was releasing as many as 3,000, exchanging as many as 3,000 prisoners a month. And I refused, though, to resume the Dix Hill Cartel in total. I was exchanging them, and other generals were exchanging them individually. But it was too little too late for the Confederacy. So that is the timeline and the story of the exchange of prisoners in the Dix Hill Cartel. Sadly, there were 350,000 federal prisoners exchanged, 152,000 Confederate prisoners that were paroled or exchanged. That's 330,000 federal troops that were paroled or exchanged, 152,000 Confederate troops. Now, 30,000 federal soldiers died in captivity, and 25,000 Confederate soldiers died in captivity. And that's a great tragedy. But that's a discussion of the exchange and parole of prisoners, and specifically the Dix Hill Cartel. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope that you will join me again soon here in the library when we discuss persons, places, or events in the Civil War by General Ulysses S. Grant. I thank you.